Again, I'm about to play the video, but another gunman opened fires at Secret Service agents trying to get to the White House. Yo, this man Trump is officially the first president with the most attempts on his life.
What is that?
Survival skills of a baby carrot. Do people really not have a sense of self-preservation? What are you doing right now? We find out that the gunman is a 21-year-old named Nazir who has had a run-in with Secret Service previously. The claim is that he walked up on a Secret Service checkpoint and started opening fire, claiming that he was Jesus Christ. What? Secret Service ended up getting in a gunfight with him. He got hit and then they proceeded to take him to the hospital. And sadly, a bystander was hit by the stray bullets and is now basically in critical condition fighting for their life. They plan on investigating and interrogating him, but come on, bro. How many times? What is this, like the fifth, sixth time? Nah, maybe that's too high. What is it, like the fourth time?
Our perspective here on the North Lawn of the White House. I'll pause so maybe you can hear part of this. The gunshots there. We heard what appeared to be dozens of gunshots. Now, we don't know how much of that may have come from the suspect and how much of that was return fire from Secret Service. But in this moment, we heard gunshot shot after gunshot, what almost sounded like fireworks at first until it was clear that was not the case. Now, Secret Service rushed reporters off of the North Lawn from here where I'm speaking to you now.
That President Trump has said a deal is close, only for the two sides to remain far apart.
Major red flags are surfacing about the shooting that took place near the White House yesterday following Donald Trump announcing that he was going to be entering into a deal with Iran. Donald Trump saying previously that he was not going to his son's wedding. Instead, he was going to stay at the White House and not also go to Bedminster, which was odd for him to be in the White House to begin with. And then there was this shooting and we heard like 30 shots were fired, and then we learned that the shooter was killed, and now we're getting a lot more information, and we're going to break it down for you. And I'm not getting into conspiratorial world here. I'm just going to bring out the facts. And so, let's just talk about what went down. But first, we should start off with what has Donald Trump been doing after this incident took place, what he did after the White House correspondent incident, what he's been consistently doing using it to push this golden ballroom. This follows at the end of last week, the United States Senate killing the $1 billion for the ballroom, saying they and the Democrats, no one's funding this $1 billion ballroom that Trump said was going to be privately funded. And so now Donald Trump's like, look, because of what just happened, this is why we need my ballroom. This is what he also said after the White House Correspondents' Dinner incident as well. Here's what he posted, and I want to talk about the shooter, how the shooter was actually someone who was known to the Secret Service, known very well to the Secret Service. I want to then show you the location where the shooting took place to show you it really wasn't all that close to the White House. Then I want to show you some other red flags, and I want you to assess this for yourself. And again, we're not veering off into conspiratorial land. We're just going to go fact by fact. Here's what Donald Trump posted late last night about 12:23 a.m. his time. This is what he posted. Thank you to our great Secret Service and law enforcement for the swift and professional action taken this evening against a gunman near the White House, who had a violent history and possible obsession with our country's most cherished structure. The gunman is dead after an exchange of gunfire with Secret Service agents near the White House gates. This event is 1 month removed from the White House Correspondents' Dinner shooting and goes to show how important it is for all future presidents to get what will be the most safe and secure space of its kind ever built in Washington, D.C. The national security of our country demands it again. He's pushing for the ballroom. You'll recall during the White House Correspondent Dinner incident, he immediately started posting, we need a ballroom. Then all of his influencers posted, the MAGA influencers, ballroom, 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 ballroom. Then he filed legal documents in a case where he was banned from building the ballroom, although that order stayed pending the ruling by the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. And then this motion said, because of the shooting that took place at the White House Correspondents' Center, this ballroom is needed to protect the national security of this country. And so now that the Senate has killed the Golden Ballroom, Donald Trump is now using this incident saying, look, another assassination attempt. Look, we need a Golden Ballroom. Let's dig in. Let's get into the facts. Let's do what we do here at the Midas Touch Network. So the suspect in the shooting who was killed near the White House, not on the White House, near, but not all that close. I'll show you where it was in a second. 21-year-old named Nasir Best. He was someone who believed that he was Jesus Christ. He was someone who suffered from very serious mental illness. He was pronounced dead at the George Washington University Hospital. He was known to be in this DC area for about 18 months, and he would frequently go to the White House and make threats against the Secret Service there. They knew this guy, and they knew him to be someone who suffered from mental illness. And
all right, shalom, shalom. Keepers of sheep, Brother Kashai, back with another lesson. Lord's will. This video is edifying. All right, before we begin, I'd like to first start off by giving all praise, all honor, and all glory to the Most High. Yahweh Bahashim, Yahweh Shai Bahashim, Rekah HaKodash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Shalom. And shalom to the hopefully elect. All right. And of course, today's lesson is inspired through the spirit and power of Yahweh, Bashim Yahweh Shai. All right. First and foremost, we'll be, making a few points, all right, on the clips you seen played at the beginning of the video. All right. And as you can see, today's lesson will be titled, Nero is back to blame. All right, something to that effect. Nero is back blaming, or something to that effect. I haven't really said it in yet, but you get the picture, man. All right, you see, if you have eyes to see and ears to hear, you see what's happening. All right, and this is not the first or the second incident we've seen, with the White House. All right. And, now we're seeing that this White House shooter, all right, suspect, all right, is being identified as a so-called black man. Right. And, this almost reminded me of the incident that happened in Charlotte on the train, I believe, with the guy and the woman, and if brothers remember that. But is basically giving point the finger, all right, the blame game, all right. They have to have someone to blame or take the fall. Right. And, I was thinking, the Chud the Builder guy, all the heat was on him. And you have to understand how these devils, they like to control the narrative of things. They like to play on the people's mind. And first, I said, Chud the Builder, he had all the heat on him. All right. All of America was, talking about Chud the Builder. But now we have this. All right. Now we have this suspect, this shooter, all right, being a so-called black man. Now all the heat is on the so-called, black. I mean, of course, we always had the target on our back, but now this is this is like a next level thing, right? And some way, somehow, they're going to try to tie this to the ministry, or, tie this just to black people in general. All right. And, I mentioned the title, Nero being back. All right. To blame, in the time of, let me go get that. I think that's 64 AD, I believe, 70 AD. You had Nero, all right, which we believe through the spirit and power, all right, of Yahweh Bashmi Al-Shah, beginning with the apostles, that we believe that your president, DJ Trump, all right, to be Nero, all right, the Emperor Nero of Rome. So just a quick historical context, all right, it says Emperor Nero, all right, famously blamed the Great Fire of Rome, in 64 AD on the Christians. All right. It says often referred to historically as a marginalized sect rather than on King James. All right. It says in July 64 AD, a catastrophic fire devastated Rome, burning 3 of the city's 14 districts and heavily damaging 7 others. All right, so I won't be surprised if the White House, all right, or, we have another so-called T attack or something of that nature, something that catches fire, or, something big happens, and, they point the finger at you so-called Negroes, all right, or you so-called Latinos, or, but, the Christians, all right, the modern day Christians would be you so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, those who believe, ultimately those who believe, all right, that believe on this, this truth, this ministry, all right, somehow, some way, all right, they're going to try to, make the ministry at fault, right? But reading on, it says rumors quickly spread that Nero himself ordered the fire cleared so he could rebuild the city and expand his lavish palace. Wow, that's crazy. Because in the the video, I've seen a couple of videos on this before, but in the video I played at the beginning of the clip, the guy spoke about how Trump is trying to, build a ballroom in the White House, right? So, I guess this is definitely the spirit of Nero, all right? It says, rumors quickly spread that Nero himself ordered the fire cleared so he could rebuild the city and expand his lavish palace, the Domus Aurea. It says to deflect this public anger and avoid revolt, all right, Nero needed a scapegoat. All right, he shifted the blame to an obscure religious group at the time, the Christians. And that today will be, again, you so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, all right, but specifically the ones pushing this truth, okay, the Israelites, right, the ministry, okay. It says persecution, all right. It says according to the Roman historical Tacticus, all right, and I believe this was a Roman. He was a Roman too, and of course he hated Christians also. All right, that's the thing, these Nero, all right, they hate you, they hate you so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans. All right, they hate this truth. All right, they hate that this word is going out, and soon they're gonna show that. All right, soon they're gonna show, and these people are not real believers. All right, they claim to be Christians, they claim to believe on JC, the Bible. I mean, but even Trump would, tells you. I think he said in one video before, he know that heaven is not a place for him. Heaven is not for him. So these devils understand and know their place. All right, in prophecy. All right, it says according to the Roman historian Tacticus, Nero subjected Christians to brutal tortures, right, including mauling by wild beasts, right, by lions, all right, things of that nature. It says crucifixions in his gardens and being burned alive as human torches. All right, so they would hang you on a cross and burn you alive and use you as a lamp or a light, like a street light. So that's what they did to the Christians as torture. All right, that was part of the persecution. And these same tortures and persecutions are coming back. All right, they're coming back in a wild way. So, we experienced it, in the time of slavery. But Jacob's trouble is going to be a whole nother level, man. It's going to be a whole different level, right, of torture. Okay. But yeah, man, this is definitely Nero back, all right, in the flesh, and hell, back in the spirit too, right? And ready to blame what? Ready to blame the ministry, man. Ready to blame someone for his faults, right? So I guess I have a couple precepts to further back up the point. And Lord willing, again, this video is edifying. Right. We'll start at Revelation 12 and 10. And it reads, "And I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, now is come salvation and strength, and the kingdom of our power, and the power of his Hamashiach. All right, for the accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accused them before our power day and night." All right, so who is the accuser? Esau, Edom, so-called white man. All right, the devil that the Bible speaks of. All right, and he's been accusing us. All right, in the spirit and on a carnal level. All right, he put all these false gods and idols before us to worship in front of the Most High. All right, it's like somebody setting you up. All right, to get in trouble or go to jail or things of that nature, and they know the whole time that this is going to lead to your demise or your fall or your destruction. All right, these devils do that. The majority of our people would go off. All right, but they didn't expect that the Lord would save a remnant. All right, which is the elect that will repent and come back and serve the Lord in truth and sincerity. Right. So Revelation 12 and 10 again, it says, "And I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, now is come salvation and strength. All right. And the kingdom of our power and the power of his anointed. All right. Hamashiach, for the accuser of our brethren is cast down." It says, which accused them before our power day and night. I mean, it means constantly. All right. I mean, with everything, he gives to us is some kind of form of wickedness. All right, to keep us, away from our power, ultimately. So let's get 2 Thessalonians 2 really quick, and start at verse 8. It says, "And then shall the wicked be revealed, whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming, even him whose coming is after the working of Satan, with all power and signs and lying wonders." All right, so this devil, he has the power to, deceive the world and to make the world think that we are the devils, that we, because what do they, they call the Lord the devil, right? They call the Lord what was it, the Lord of bees, Lord of flies, something to that nature. Basically, calling him the devil, right? It says, even him whose coming is after the working of Satan, with all power and signs and lying wonders, and with all deceivableness of unrighteousness, and them that perish, because they receive not the love of the truth, that they might be saved. And for this cause our power shall send them strong delusion, that they should believe a lie, that they all might be damned who believed not the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness. All right. And that's the thing. Our people, they run with the same narrative. All right. They Esau push it. They run with that. So if Esau say we're blacks, we're African American, or, or we're we're not the God's chosen people. They run with that same narrative, and they cleave to it. All right. That they love that. Right. They don't want to be chosen people. Right. All right. And that's why it says in the Clay-Skis, the book of Sirach, in the Apocrypha 12:10, it says, never trust thine enemy. All right. Jake has forgotten that we have an enemy. Even though it's obvious we have enemies, and not enemies amongst our own people, but enemies amongst the other nations. All right. It's obvious that these people are enemies, but Jake, they don't acknowledge that. They acknowledge the enemies in our nation. All right, amongst our nation, but not the other nations. Again, Clay-Skis, also known as Sirach in the Apocrypha, never trust thine enemy, for like as iron rusteth, so is his wickedness. All right, so while these devils seem to be the light, seem to be the people of peace or whatever, right? They eventually their wickedness show. All right, they can do you a million favors. All right, be gentle, soft. All right, caring, but eventually, all right, their wickedness will show. All right, eventually they're gonna bite you. Eventually they're gonna eat you. Okay. What else? Let's get 1 Peter 5:8. All right, and you understand that this Nero is back. This is Rome 2.0. All right, and the persecution of the Christians. All right, meaning the persecution of the prophets. All right, will begin. All right, will happen here in America. All right, meaning those men are back. Okay, so Nero's back. All right, and those men, all right, those Christians, those believers are back. All right, the elect is back. All right. 1 Peter 5:8. It says, "Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour." And of course, we look at this as on a carnal level, but even on a spiritual level, this devil is always looking for plotting who he can put at fault. All right, who he can put at fault before the Heavenly Father, who he can put at fault, control the narrative, put at fault, just in the world in general. Okay, because this devil, he doesn't take accountability. He won't be blamed. All right. He hold himself blameless. All right. Okay. Let's get John 16:2. All right. It says, they shall put you out of these synagogues. Yea, the time cometh that whosoever killeth you will think that he doeth God's service. All right, so this is how they're going to justify these persecutions. All right, by saying that this is the will of God, this is what God wanted, or that we are against the God of the Bible, or something of that nature. It says they shall put you out of the synagogues. Yea, the time cometh that whosoever killeth you will think that he doeth God's service, meaning that they're gonna try to separate us from this truth, separate us from the ministry, and make it seem like we're in cults. All right, that we're practicing hate. All right, and that's the thing. That's why we can't get cornered with these devils. You can't get cornered. Don't be tough. You can't be a tough guy, man. This is not the time to be a tough guy. These devils want you to act out. That's why they set up Chud the Builder. All right, they want you to act out. They want you to do something to get because they're gonna kill you. They want you to do something to get yourself shot. All right. And while we know that this Nazir Best situation, all right, ultimately is it's an inside job, of course. It's all set up, man. It's all to control the narrative, man. Right? Fake news, right? Second Corinthians 6:3 says, giving no offense in anything, that the ministry be not blamed. Right? It says, but in all things, approving ourselves as the ministers of the Most High, in much patience, in afflictions, in necessities, in distress, in stripes, in imprisonment, in tumults, in labors, in watchings, in fastings, by pureness, by knowledge, by long suffering, by kindness, by the Holy Spirit, by love unfeigned. All right, so we're gonna have to suffer, man. We're gonna have to be wrongfully accused, and there's nothing we can do or say about it. We're just gonna have to take it, just like our Lord did, just like Yahweh. Right. So the time is coming that we're gonna have to be humble, man. Okay. Let's see. Matthew 5:11, and we'll close out. It says, blessed are ye when men shall revile you and persecute you, and shall say all manner of evil against you falsely for my sake. All right. So ultimately, it all goes back to, being tried. All right. It goes back to, what the Lord warned us of. Okay. So with that, man, hey, once again, I pray, Lord willing, this video was edifying. Until next time, I'll let it close out by giving all praise, all honor, and all glory to the Most High, Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai Bahashem, Rakah HaKodash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of the great millstone, Shalom, and Shalom to the hopeful elect.